there's a tendency to shy away from really evaluating why one loses. Certain reasons for losing are seen as okay, while other reasons for losing are seen as excuses, which I find to be interesting, actually. I find it to be really, really fascinating because what differentiates an excuse from a reason in your mind, right? How do you know that you're not just coping? How do you make that decision? I think part of how you make that decision is by being honest with yourself. Really. Say, all right, well, what happened here? Did I do the things I was supposed to do? No. Okay, why didn't you? Well, I felt pressure. Okay. What have you done in the past under pressure? I've done the XYZ thing or whatever. And you'll basically find that sometimes it's not you. Basically, sometimes the problem isn't you specifically what you're doing. Sometimes if you're playing online, for example, you're playing in lag, right? You're playing in delay. Okay, well, you're playing delay. I lost because I was playing under the delay. Or let's say you're playing offline and your monitor has lots of lag on it. You're not used to it. Or you're used to lag and it doesn't have lag, and now you're having to adjust to it and you didn't get time to play on it. Or maybe you're playing on overheating machines and the timings get all jacked up. You hear about Punk complaining about this all the time. He gets flamed really hard for it. But then later on, people will say, oh, wait, actually they were all laggy. He was right. And he was just part of why I respect Punk a lot, because he'll say things that people don't like that are true. Sometimes he says things that people don't like that are actually not true, but so like there's a little bit of both. But what I'm trying to get at there is he's not afraid to say things that most other fighting game players will say are excuses. Basically, there's a myth that you should be able to handle anything. Anything possible thrown your way, you should be able to handle. Controllers aren't working, you should be able to still win with that. You're super exhausted because you didn't sleep last night, you should be able to still win under that. You didn't eat all day for 2 weeks or something, you should be able to win under that. It's like, bro, no, you shouldn't. You should not expect to win in those conditions. All right, your expectation should be to lose or perform under your typical level. So, no excuses. Right, that's the thing. I think, can excuses be used? What really is an excuse? It's a reason. Excuses are reasons. And if you're using the same reason all the time, that's not valid, it's inaccurate, it's not backed in facts, in data, then it's an excuse. But if there's data to back up your rationale for what happened, that's not an excuse. That's a reason. That's an explanation. That's something you can learn from and grow from and play around. Let me give another example. With my main character, right? Eileen, virtual fighter, super light, one of the worst characters in the game because of that. But you could say, all right, well, she sucks. You shouldn't play her because she's a super light and takes lots of damage. So, all right, well, to me, I look at that and say, oh, well, she's a super light. Then just don't get hit. Don't get launched. Don't get super high launched and you'll be fine. That, I could say, is an excuse for why you lose with her, because you keep getting yourself launched super high, right? You keep doing a thing that's not effective and you keep doing it. Some would say that's an excuse. I would say that's a reason. But you could say that's a reason, and I could say that's an excuse, right? It doesn't really matter. We're getting caught in semantics here. What's important is don't be afraid to view something you might think of as an excuse for why you lost something as an excuse. Because I think too many FGC heads are afraid of using excuses to explain their performance, and it stops them from growing. You really do need to know, why did you lose? In my event that I just did, I played really well the day before. Played well the day after. Didn't play very well that event specifically. Now, last year, the event was run at the same time. And interestingly enough, I started underperforming at the same time. Literally at the same time of night. I stopped playing very well. So I now have 2 data points to say, all right, first time, maybe I wasn't like on point. Maybe I wasn't on point, right? Second time, like, no, I was on point. I know I was on point. All right, I can't play at that time of night. Basically, is what I had to realize. And you might say that's an excuse, Tricky. You're just coping. But okay, well, fine, whatever. You can say what you want. You can believe what you want. I know for myself that when I'm tired, my performance nosedives. Now you might say, I'm going to give you this example, using myself here as an example here, because this is important for you. Because what's an excuse for you or a reason for you might be an excuse for somebody else. So you have to know yourself really well. Now, for me, for instance, I was tired. Other players were also tired, but they still played pretty well. So what's differentiating the two of us? We're both tired. We're both playing under the same conditions. What's different? Well, I have a sleep disorder. Okay, that's a big difference. All right, so I get tired in a different way that affects my cognitions severely, in a way that I can't do anything about without like altering my entire life for like a week. That's a difference. It's a huge difference. I'm sure there are other things about you who are listening to this, who are watching right now, that are different as well. Things that are conditions or situations or environmental stressors that if they are present, you will be differentially impacted by them versus your competition. And if you talk about those things, people might say, oh, you're just coping or you're making excuses. Like, no. We're not all the same. Everyone's not the same. Much as people like to think it is not the case, we are not all the same. We have differences. We have differences in ability, we have differences in our cognition, we have differences in a variety of things. You need to know what those things are for you. And when you identify this is a problem for you, solve how to get around it. Let me catch up Zulu. An excuse is fine so long as you're truly aware of it and are working on eradicating it in the future or preventing it as much as possible. Otherwise it becomes a copium. Yeah. That's from the YouTube chat, Zulu. Yes. We give you let's go further with that example there. So I don't fully agree with that. So what if you're playing? I think Brawly Legs is a great example, actually. Brawly Legs had a whole lot of physical limitations, but he played and was really fucking good at what he did, considering his limitations, especially. But he still had limitations. The limits were still there, right? That's part of what I mean. Some reasons are permanent. There is no getting around it. There is no, I'm going to pretend this doesn't exist. Some limits are very real, and you have to play within them. You can do your best to work around them, to mitigate its impact on you, but there's a limit. And at least in my case, for Choya Cup, I hit that limit for myself. And I was just like destroyed by it. I was like, damn it. Because like I didn't want to accept it. I was like, I can totally work around this. I could like totally just wake up later or like, do a lot of other things to try and make it so that I don't like just crash. But I couldn't. I literally couldn't. I was like, I tried to take a nap. It was nothing. I literally had to accept it. I had to accept that I cannot play in these conditions. And if I talk about it, if I complain about it, I'm going to be seen as a sore loser, or I'm going to be seen as coping, or I'm going to be seen as making excuses because people don't know my own personal conditions, which is fine. But now it's been enough time that I'm like, all right, let me cook this. Let me think about this. See how I'm going to talk about this, because I think it's valuable. And in terms of mindset, I think this is a mindset that is really toxic to us as FGC players, of being so quick to label anything as an excuse. And that being a reason to to like say, well, it's just that's an excuse. I've had people go as far, and this is when we're going farther back. I've had people go as far back as saying, getting hit or getting counter hit in a situation is an excuse, or giving rationale for why I chose to do one thing in a given situation over another thing is an excuse. It's like, bro, those aren't excuses. That's just how I lost. That's just what happened. What are you talking about? Like, so this mentality of no excuses actually prevents players from viewing the reality of data in front of them and saying, oh, this is why I lost. Cool, got it. Let me try not to do that again. And sometimes, like in Street Fighter 2, there are a lot of situations, Street Fighter more broadly, there are a lot of situations where the solution is don't be in the situation. That literally, sometimes a situation is so bad, it's so poor for you, that the only way to not lose from it is to not be in the situation. But if you don't know what those situations are, you're going to keep going into them over and over again. It's really important to know what those things are for you as a person. What are your, I can't be in this position, or I die, or I lose, or I'm unable to do what I need to do. You gotta learn those things for yourself. Gamer Boy says, one must know thyself and master oneself before you can learn to master things in life. Learn thyself first before learning the world. Yeah, it helps a lot. Knowing yourself helps you learn the world a lot better. And sometimes fear of being seen as weak for being able to make pretty, fact-based observations or explanations for what's happening in your gameplay is seen as like bad. So, yeah, I'm going to encourage us to leave the no excuses behind. And because I think there's an overcorrection in FGC around that to a degree that's toxic. It might not sound it, it may not seem it, but it is. Because it blinds people from being able to accurately observe what's happening and make rational decisions based off of it. Because of fear of making an excuse. Now, you should act on it though, right? So what am I going to do now that I've learned about myself? Like, I really can't compete, expect to compete well after a certain time of night. Well, that's what I've learned. I cannot expect myself to perform well after a certain time of night, even in a fighting game. Very bitter pill to swallow. Like, it pains my soul to have to say that and for it to be real and have to accept it. But I do myself no service by pretending that's not the case when I have pretty good evidence that it is the case. Aside of all of the things I know about myself. Outside of just fighting games, just more broadly. So yeah, you might find for yourself there are things that you don't do well around. You just gotta find out those things are. How do you deal with going on a bad run? A bad run depends. I guess part of what Pope is talking from, that question came from YouTube chat because people can't see it. How do you deal with being on a bad run? This is part of how. You have to understand why you had a bad run. I looked back at my sets that I did this past week and 2 weekends ago, whatever, specifically around the tournament time. Because I played it before the tournament, day before, played really well, on point, perfect. Played after the tournament, played really well, on point, perfect. During the tournament, you could say, oh, well, you were nervous. I played so many tournaments, like dozens over upon dozens, over maybe 100 by now. I don't get nervous in tournaments anymore. But I also know what happens to me when I get tired. I start pressing buttons that are incorrectly. I lose fine motor control. I start slowing down. And everything slows down. Now, that's also something that happens when someone's feeling anxious or pressured as well. I know myself well enough to be able to differentiate between those two things. I know it wasn't that. I know it wasn't anxiety. Was there anxiety there? Of course there was. It'd be ridiculous to say there wasn't. But to the point where I wasn't able to perform, no, no. Because I know other things about myself in terms of how I react to being sleepy. Basically, after 7 o'clock, I'm cooked. I start to perform exponentially worse as time goes on. By midnight, I'm not a motivated person. Basically, I'm like tricky. I don't drink alcohol, but if I was to be drinking alcohol, me at 7 o'clock is me buzzed. And midnight is me like flat out drunk, basically, like cognitively. So I can put those two things together and say, all right, that's why I had a bad run. Now, what do you do with that information? Pope, Sim Bagel, Bengal. Well, you could say, don't play when you're tired. Sure, I do that. What if you have to play when you're tired, though? What if you have to play at an event and like it's at 11:30 p.m.? Well, frankly, that's one of the situations where you'd be like, okay, well, organizers, why are we playing it this late? What happened? Why can't we play earlier? Why are we? So like, one thing is try to change the situation and see, well, how did this situation even become like this? I still don't have a good answer to why it was run so late, but regardless, it's not my problem. There still may be future events run at times like that. And I have two options. Either compete and expect to not do very well, or two, not compete in those events at all. That's a choice one has to make. I don't know what I'll do next year. If it's going to continue to be running this late, like that late of an hour, I'll probably still compete just because it's hard for me not to. And I like hanging out with folks. But I'll compete without the expectation or pressure of performance on myself. Because I know I'm already going to be playing at a much weaker level due to environmental factors outside my control that I can't do anything about. That's a key feature. You have to know what you can do. Like, if you can't do anything about it, then you have to like accept it, really. But yeah, Pope, I would ask you have to examine why you had a bad run. Was it the players you had to fight against? Was it the matchup? Was it just you were just feeling bad that day? You were just tired? Like, there are a million reasons why.